It's time to learn from the best of game devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 83 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with the best people in our industry every Wednesday morning. If you need motivation and tactics for a successful gaming career, then this is the podcast for you. Now let's chat with today's featured guest, Blair Leggett. Blair, it is a game time. Are you ready?
I am more or less ready. I don't know if you're talking to the stars of the industry. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but no.
You're going to show us tonight. You're going to show
us.
All
right. That's great. Yeah.
So he leads a small indie studio with his wife called One More Story Games. With over 20 plus years experience in the game industry, they have built their own game engine specifically for authors to create narrative games and publish 7 games in the last 3 years while building the engine. And their work includes Danielle's Inferno, Skycarver, and the upcoming Shakespeare Landlord. And Blair himself, he used to work at EA, working on games like SSX3, Skate, and Skate 2. And then he worked at Zynga in San Francisco, helping launch Cityville. So go ahead, Blair, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Okay, let me just say up front, please don't blame me for working at Zynga. It was a big time. We all worked very hard. I am so sorry for that you got notifications that somebody needed milk for their cow or something, or water for their cow, water their crops, I guess is the big one. It's I've been in the industry for 17 years. Yeah, working for some of the bigger studios out there, arguably some of the biggest meat grinders that are out there, but we can get into that sort of for some other stuff. But I came home. I grew up in this little town in Ontario, Canada, and I just wanted to build the company that I wish I had growing up here in this little small town. So there's not too many other technical people. There's a couple of companies around, but no real game studios per se. And we're just starting to really get going with our new Story Stylus engine, which is what people can use to go online and create their own point-and-click adventure games.
Wow. So to this day, can you explain your main area of expertise?
That is good. That is, yes. Well, I'll do my best as that. It's, I'm what would in the games industry or even in program development terms, I would be what's called a jack of all trades. So especially working at EA for the 4 or 5 or 6 teams that I worked on there, I mean, you move around and you go to develop and, you fill in the gaps for whatever they sort of need. So, I worked with some people who were incredible graphics programmers, with amazing background and experience. But I tended to be the guy that would work on whatever was most needed on the team. And so that took several forms: UI design, UI implementation, gameplay programmer. I worked for a while. But one of the main areas that I worked at behind the scenes was what's called a toolsmith. So working and building all of the tools that is required to be more efficient to get the game published and allow people to the team to manipulate content and get that content into the game. They're kind of like they're like the software engineers of game development.
Software engineers?
Yeah, they're the guy. I mean, we're the people that are trying to build the tools that make people move faster. Or, and that could be all kinds of things, from pipeline development to internal content creation tools to asset management to, all kinds of stuff like that.
Gee, it sounds like you got like a huge amount of work on your shoulder or something, like jack of all trades, and then you got to build the tools to optimize the game.
Yes. And then you work on the game and maintain the tools while you're at it. So, good fun stuff.
I want to know, like, what is something we probably don't know about in that sense, where you have to build tools in order to optimize the game? Like, if we have to do that for our own game, what is something we probably don't know about that we should?
One of the things I wanted to, and I sent you the link for this earlier, it's an IGN article from February 5th, 2017. And the title of the article is Unsung Heroes of the Games Industry, Tools Programmers. It's And it's all of the things that you don't necessarily think about, but for AAA studios and big games that you really, if you don't have, you are going to be overwhelmed so fast, especially with the kind of demands that have been placed on AAA games these days. I mean, the degree and amount of content, I mean, it costs so much to build a AAA game these days, you know, easily, you know, for the big guys, 100 to 200 million, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you need something that allows your team, which could be 100, 200 people, to move very fast and be able to iterate and build content and see those changes so you can, you know, get the game kind of done in schedule, under budget, hopefully, or at least, at the very least, sometimes have multiple development teams that aren't, you know, in the same geographic area, you know, these remote teams working together to be able to deploy content fast. And that's the kind of thing that a Toolsmith programmer can work on. And even then, it isn't necessarily just the AAAs. You can have that for the indie games, for indie game studios, if, say, you've got like a level editor, you know, or you've got, I mean, you can do it, and you can build levels by manually editing data, but why would you want to? I mean, that's not the fun way to sort of do stuff, right? So if you can build your own editor, it allows you to move faster and get your content out and find errors faster, usually. It just makes you more efficient, leaner, meaner as a development team.
How exactly do you become that part in a group? Like, do you have to necessarily have all the skills? Like, do you have to be a jack of all trades in order to fulfill that role?
Yes. How you become a toolsmith is you draw these short straw when they're emptying out roles. Yeah, no. Actually, it's funny. One of the reasons why I got started, at least back in 2001, was because I was the guy, the developer who was interested in, you know, games development, but also knew how relational databases worked, you know, and also knew how network protocols worked to be able to communicate across, you know, and to send information across a network or have, say, even like a shared network drive or something like that. This is before the big networking multiplayer games really got going, right? I mean, now it's a standard feature, but you know, back in the day, you're playing on a PS2, a PS1, you know, the original, some degree, the Xbox, I think, got a little bit more multiplayer. But even then, I mean, Nintendo has typically gone for, if you multiplay, you're generally playing in the same room. Although Mario Kart would probably be the best example of where you've got like lots of people playing, you know, remote stuff. So for me, it was, I had all this experience with databases and networking technology, and it really was, I approached game development as standard software engineering. So for me, and that's not to say that game developers aren't software engineers, but they focus on different kinds of things, right? I mean, and that's where, like when I was at EA, we had all these rendering gods, let's call them, right? That are just the most brilliant, talented people that are doing all of these visual effects and stuff that is absolutely incredible. I mean, I don't know. I haven't listened to any of your other programs there, Tony. I apologize. But I mean, if you want to, that's one of the things that people find out when they want to start doing graphics. It's like, what's all this math doing there? I don't want to stuff, you know? Like, yeah, yeah, well, you want to know a rendering pipeline? Okay. Start with, you know, learning how to do, you know, eigenvalues in your sleep and, you know, figuring out matrix multiplication to the nth degree. And yeah, you know, that gets you going. And that's not even taking into account if you're getting into like physics and, you know, collision detection. And I mean, that's the thing. It's all math, right?
That's why it's so fascinating, because there's so much to it, and I'm just like, I don't know how you do it, Blair. That's why I'm like, I'm just mind blown at how people make you play a game, because there's just so much to it, so much different things going on at once.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, it's doing it. Look, there's lots of people who can tell you how to solve a problem, let's say, like, to do the graphics pipeline for your game. Okay. But as I recall these people, these rendering gods, they're the people who know how to do it and give you the most efficient solution for the development platform that you're working on. And that is hard-won, learned craft in this industry. It's not, I don't have that knowledge, but I have a high degree of respect for the people who are able to do that and make these individual platforms sing for the particular constraints. I think there's maybe less and less constraints as much as maybe, back in like the PS2 days when you had memory requirements. That was, you had to work around the physical limitations of how much memory you have on the machine, right? So how to page stuff in effectively and get the biggest bang for your buck on the hardware. But I think now the problem is not the limitations of hardware, it's that the different console makers have their own different ways of doing things. And it's just knowing what the particular voodoo is from platform to platform to platform. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, because everybody has, like you mentioned earlier, they're different to develop for, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And when you work at something like an EA, you're rolling out a multi-platform game, and that's just like a standard. That's sort of where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And I'm sure doing mobile games, knowing the difference between an iOS platform and an Android platform, it's you can either take a broad approach and sort of use stuff that works for both, but it isn't custom, or you develop a specific iOS game for their platform, and then maybe you do another version, you port it over to an Android platform, or vice versa. It's knowing what's best for each of the content delivery systems, consoles or mobile devices for which you're building your games. And that's good hard-won knowledge, and things are always changing, which is always fun. And what works today may not necessarily work tomorrow, or you get more options tomorrow, and it's finding out what's the best way to do stuff. And that's what these programming gods of the AAA studios are learning and doing, right? So
And I want to ask, what mistakes are most common when people are trying to develop these new tool sets or these, pipeline to make the workflow? What are mistakes that people come up with oftentimes when trying to do something like that?
That is very interesting. Because while I can give you technical answers for that question, I think what might best help your listeners, right? Unless you're building a game all by yourself, which, kudos. I know people who have worked on games for like 7 years, and, they publish them at the end of the 7 years, and, that's a lot of dedication and focus, and very cool. But otherwise, if you're like us normal mortals, you have to work with people. So I think probably for me, the biggest problems I've seen in this industry, in my experience, is programmers who don't know how to get along.
Oh.
Right? And knowing how to work in a team, knowing how to communicate is absolutely essential if you want to get anywhere. Because if you have, like I said, there are these very brilliant people, and that's great. But if you can't get along with people, or you can't communicate with people, your project's dead in the water. And that's one of those softer side of things that we sometimes forget about. And so for me, it's being able to build something in tandem with everything else, no egos, and to be able to do it in such a way that it makes it most efficient for a number of people to move in tandem towards the same goal. So many times I have seen where development projects fall apart because one person thought one thing and another person thought another, and it wasn't until they go to integrate it all in and suddenly, whoops, you're talking French and I'm talking Italian, and and then suddenly you have to unwind that, and if you had caught that earlier, it would save you the development headaches later when everything is built up. And if you build your design and get your communication working first, then that's going to save you so many headaches down the road. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it sounds like you had some bad moments, and you kind of single out programmers in a way, because you're like, programmers, you gotta learn how to communicate better.
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I think, look, I'm not blaming programmers. No, I am a programmer. No, but what I find is when stuff gets very ego driven, it's the need to be right versus the need of the team to work on the project. If you need to be right versus working with your teammates, you got a problem. And I've seen it happen among programmers. I've seen it happen between artists and developers. I've seen it happen between, management and the rest of the dev team, right? I mean, it's all of the ways in which people don't get along that 9 times out of 10 will bite you in the ass before you even get to the technical problems. It's all of these minds and problems that are sort of lurking there that you don't know about until it's too late. And then it takes you even more effort to solve them, versus if you had just follow decent software engineering tactics and define your terms and all get on the same page first, you wouldn't be in San Francisco while I'm over in New York. I mean, if you just corrected the directions to begin with, we'd be in Chicago and we'd all be finished.
And that communication ahead of time, it's just so crucial. And that kind of leads us to our next point, because you're mentioning all these. This bad communication can cause, have huge consequences. Like, I want to know, what was the worst moment of your career? Whether it was just talked about or something else you want to tell us in general. But
no. I got loads of stories, man. I know where lots of bodies are buried, but, yeah. I've been thinking that through. I think if I could give you 2 answers, I think I can give you 2 answers to that question. One that was personally for me, that was the most devastating. And then quite possibly the moment for which in my career led to the biggest problems. Or, that sounds kind of like the same thing, but there is one. Okay, well, let me get into it then. So, like, personally for me, one of the games you didn't mention that's on there, and so the EA studio I worked for was EA Canada, or EA Burnaby now, because I guess they have them like the Montreal studio, and even then I think that's the Toronto studio and a lot of other studios like that. But I mean, I don't know if you've ever. I mean, sometimes there are events up in Vancouver. I don't know if yourself have actually been to the city, Tony, or not. Or
I want to, but no, I haven't.
Okay, gorgeous. Amazing. I can recommend about a dozen different sushi places that you'd probably love, and great food. But the EA Burnaby campus is just a monster. It's huge. It can, and I haven't even seen it probably in about, maybe 7 years, 8 years. So it's probably larger now, but it's just this enormous complex. It can house about 3,000, 4,000 employees. So it's like this little mini city. And it's just gorgeous in terms of like the cafeteria that's there, the soccer field that's there. They have one of the world's largest mocap facilities there. It's just amazing. And that's where I started my game development career in 2001. Yay! But if you know anything about that studio, a lot of the sports games are made up there. So NHL, NFL was made down in the used to be Tiburon, but now it's the Redwood Shores EA. But they also do NBA there. And probably what might not seem like the biggest game, but really it is, their soccer game or football game, FIFA. FIFA is such a huge brand for EA. It doesn't mean as much here, say in North America, but like in Europe, Latin America, South America, soccer is enormous around the world. It's just not as big over here for us, right? So one of the games that I worked on, everybody has to do a turn on one of the sports franchises. So, I mean, you might get dumped on an NBA that year to sort of help out stuff, or an NHL. For me, it was I worked on one of the FIFAs, FIFA 2005. And it was recovering from the previous year, 2004, where in terms of software engineering, that was a messed up explosion, disaster of development. Absolutely awful. So 2005, things were scaled back to save the sanity of the team. So I actually had one of my better development times there. But when the project was done, I elected to work on a section of the code to take and manage all of the database. Well, in essence, it's a relational database system built on something in RAM. So with FIFA, you have all of these statistics and scores and player stats and and so on. And that's all managed internally with, again, another tool set. And I wanted to get into to manage that. I wanted to be able to do it, but the guy who wrote the code and managed it for the 2 years before me was one of those real virtuoso programmers. But again, like brilliant guy, but just had the most abstract code style that I've ever seen or ever experienced. I mean, they measured efficiency for code in terms of how much you could do it in one line. So the fewer lines your code was, the better developed it was seen. And this just made for the most abstract, technically difficult obfuscation of development logic. And I like lost my mind in trying to work on this stuff. So for me personally, I mean, I wanted to help out. I wanted to work on this project, but it was just one of these cases where, you know, it's one of these things where you have a solution to a problem, but it isn't necessarily the best solution to a problem or the one that's going to be most compatible with a team of people who are coming to maintain that code. Now, I mean, if you're an indie developer, you might not have these problems, and that's, you know, I completely get that. But if you're working for any of the big studios, a lot of your time is going to be spent maintaining old code. Trust me. Trust me on this, because engines change, you know, they are iterated from year to year to year, and being able to get that stuff moving and keep it doing and meeting the needs of the game designers and the development team. And I mean, it's they don't tell you this, but that's one of the big things that you're probably going to be doing is finding ways to make the engine work for what you want to do. So it's like trying to shuffle a deck of cards with one hand tied behind your back. So for me, that was, oh gosh, that was so hard. I wanted so much to be able to do this, but it just didn't allow. The level of technical requirements for that project really bit me in the butt, and that's too bad. So for me personally, I look back on that time and just, you know, I lost my mind trying to do my best to keep people moving. So, yeah, what are you going to do?
Well, what happened? What happened afterwards? Like, did you?
Well, I basically, I just said, nope, you know what? They had these standards. They wanted to maintain this most complex level of code, and they wanted to dump it all on one person. And I just said, you know what? Put me on another team. I cry uncle. And then they brought in a team of 5 developers to do it. Yeah. So I thought I could do it. I tried really hard and thought I could do it. And, I really pushed myself beyond, I really pushed my limits to be able to do it. It's kind of like, trying to jump across to the other side of a chasm there, and you're like the Wile E. Coyote. You're like running along, and then nope, not going to make it, and thud, right? It's just one of those moments. So I went off and worked on another team at that point, and some people were reprimanded for trying to do it by cutting way too many corners. And then after that, they redeveloped it with more resources. And I didn't want to have anything to do with those people anymore. So funny about that.
I don't blame you for wanting to run a team. And in one sense, if you can, like, what do you want to make sure game devs take away from that experience? Like, because originally, of course, you didn't know that it was going to be that bad, or you didn't know that was coming. So what do you want to make sure we take away from that experience?
I think, again, it goes back to that the communication is key. And even then, I think that's one of the things that when you're working for big studios, for instance, you'll be assigned a task and people want you to give an estimate of how long it's going to take you to do this. And it's one of the hardest things you'll do in your career, at least working on those kind of scales. It's kind of like you have to pull a number out of thin air. You don't know all the problems. You don't know what you're going to run into. And there are people that hold you to that when things are changing all the time. And for some way, you have to be this, oracular God that can see and know and be able to keep up with all of the things that are changing to meet what you thought was, a best guess to begin with anyways, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, knowing how to estimate, knowing how to communicate, these are an understanding a problem as you get into it to see just the degree of complexity and to know your skills in terms of what it's going to take to complete a task. I mean, one of the things that drives games consumers up the wall is it's like, well, why are these project dates slipping? And I assure you, it's largely because of the kinds of things that developers are trying to solve under budget in no time to be able to deliver a game of effective quality, right? Mm-hmm. It's you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have it good. Pick two.
Yeah, I heard about that. The triangle or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the software engineering triangle. So for me, I think it's understanding, being modest in terms of your skills, and don't set out, like, say, for your first game to try to recreate Grand Theft Auto 5. Start and look at this as not a sprint but a marathon in terms of, on your first lap, learn a particular set of skills and then build on those skills and build on those skills. And then, each project should be seen as like a learning opportunity to further expand your skills, either to further specialize them or to broaden them in terms of like for me, it's like a jack of all trades, a toolsmith or gameplay or, UI, whatever. All of these things come together that make games happen. So
we've been through this. Like you have a lot of experience in the game development pipeline. I'm wondering, what do you see is the biggest waste of time that game devs work on? Your
RCS, your revision control system. Okay. In terms of game development, so too as a Mountaineer has their safety line, a developer or game team has their revision control system. If you fall on a mountain, you want to know that your safety line is well attached and it will save your life.
Uh-huh.
So too in game development, you want to know if code gets messed up or something gets fubar, that you have a revision control system like a GitHub or a Perforce or, that will help you recover, not if accidents happen, but when they happen, especially as you start scaling up with more and more development people on your team. To be able to recover from merge errors or, you're working on something, I'm working on something, and your change stomps over top of my change, you need to be able to have a system that allows you to go back to recover from those mistakes quickly, because that's your game. That is your game in a nutshell right there. Everything that your code that you're writing, you could be the most brilliant person in the world. If you don't have a way to roll back when bad stuff happens, and it will, it's just, it's like your revision control system is your insurance policy that will save you so much time. And there's a lot of different ones out there. I mean, I don't even know if you've had an answer like this before from any of the other people you talked to, Tony, but it's, in my mind, it's just one of those, it's a no-brainer, because you are effectively managing and protecting your game from accidents. It is the plastic cover that's preventing, there are developers of all different kinds of skills, but, you get the bonehead who comes in who's spilling their drink everywhere. You want to know you've got a plastic cover to protect your, fine mahogany table or your code base, as it were. So, yeah. And the biggest waste of time is when you don't have a strict system in place and you are wasting time recovering from something that should have been very simple to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, like a backup plan, or at least you're documenting everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. I mean, am I the best in documentation? I try. When I'm doing something that's a little wonky, I'll put in some extra notes in there to sort of help me. But I mean, that's when I worked at Zynga, it was interesting. There was somebody who was on the executive team at Zynga at that time who wanted to use SVN. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it's one of these other systems, and, it has a particular style. Some people like it. I don't. And that's because I was coming from, for instance, when I worked on Skate, with the first one, that was a brand new IP that required a whole new game library of code. There were I think at one time 40 software engineers working on that code base, which is, I mean, I don't know. I think that's still pretty large if it's just engineers. Maybe not as much these days for like the Skyrims or the Destinies, or where we've gotten in terms of development these days. Assassin's Creed, the latest Assassin's Creed probably has 20, 30 engineers in there. But especially when you are working on something that's new and you're trying to get this sort of off the ground, I mean, it was crazy. We had so many people in there, and not to be an ad for this particular software, but it's the one I use, Perforce. It allows you to recover very quickly from mistakes, and you can check merge revisions, branch stuff off. It's your insurance policy. It is your safety line that helps you in developing your project, your game. And I mean, it again, taking that mountaineering analogy, yes, you could climb a mountain without a safety line, but would you want to?
Heck no. Heck no.
right? One small mistake, and who knows what you miss and what you lose, and then the waste of time comes in. Is that now you have to go back for stuff that you've already written and fix it. If that isn't a waste of time, I don't know what is.
Once again, that software is called Perforce.
Yep. There is, for small indie studios, you can usually get a Perforce license for, I think, you can develop the software free, I think, if your team is no more than 4 people. I got it back in the day when they had they hadn't adjusted their numbers very well. So my particular Perforce server has 20 licenses. So I've been able to swap that out for all of my developments in the past 4 years that I've worked on this, and had, co-op students come in and out to sort of help me build this stuff. But don't overlook the importance of that. And that's one of the things, actually, when I get students who come in from college or university, and then they're working on, live code, you learn immediately how to work with other people, how to code with other people, and how to work on a project where there are thousands of files, and you have to be able to know how to check it out, work on it, check it back in without causing any problems. And I think that's just the same for indie developers these days anyways, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, you can make backups of folders and, think that you're covered. But being able to go in and see the interactive changes, the iterative changes that have gone through your files, it can be invaluable, because you can see where problems developed and see the logic that led to that, and then, steer it another way or recover. It just lets you find stuff faster. And we all want to move faster, right? Oh,
definitely. Game Devs, I will link that up. Get on using Perforce. It will save you a ton of time if something goes wrong in the future. Let's move on. The game industry is booming. What are you most excited about today?
What am I most excited about today? Well, probably one of the best games this year that's come out is a little shooter game that was actually developed just down the road from me here, Cuphead. Have you played Cuphead yet?
I haven't played it, but I absolutely love the animation. Okay. I love it.
All right. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a lot of fun. It's brutal. It is unforgiving at times, and you'll want to slam your controller into the wall, throw it out the window. But it's a great example of a team that thought outside of the box, that made a gamble, tried something new. I mean, the gameplay in and of itself is not necessarily new, but the style of the game is such that if you see a screenshot or even a little preview video, you're like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I love that this industry we are getting these indie studios who are pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope, finding new ways to create interactive experiences that are meaningful for the game players, for players of the day, right? The big studios will go on and iterate and release their, numerical versions up into 2 or 3 figures. But it's the small indie studios where it's possible to take a risk, find a unique concept, and your audience will be there for you. Hopefully, that's the. It doesn't always work, but Cuphead has shown that it can reward. Risks can be rewarded.
Oh yeah, and like I mentioned, this is why I love doing the podcast, because I want to help motivate indie developers to go out there and make these great games. And and like you mentioned, Cuphead is made by, I think, less than 5 people, I believe.
Okay, that's not completely true. The main team they brought in external developers to help them as they finaled. They've recently been giving a lot of talks about their development process. They were recently at a game development conference called MIGS that's in Montreal. That was I think last week or so. And I'm seeing some of the things that have come out of that about, what their experiences were. I mean, when they started out, yes, I think they were 4 or 5 people to the point where their wrists were falling off with all of the animation, the hand-drawn animation that they're putting into their game, right? That's dedication.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep. But, it shows. It shows where that hard work can get you in terms of delivering a product that nobody's seen before, that is a unique enough concept that finds an audience that's willing to, pay for your product.
Yes, do it game does. I want to see what kind of games you put out there. There's so many good games out there. I just want to play them all. Well, what is that one game that influenced you the most and why?
Okay. Well, I had to think back. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with this series, but I think for me, it made all of the difference. And that would be the first Ultima game way back in 81, 82, 81, where really and truly it was the first big RPG game we'd ever seen. And that was for the Apple IIe computer I had at the time. And I think when I first saw this concept, I mean, I was playing D&D, as 7, 8-year-old anyways, right? But it was this notion that you could program a computer to be the DM. And that just blew my mind. That changed everything for me. And I think everything that has followed for me has been trying to enable storytellers to be able to get games out there, like lower the barriers of entry for writers, screenplay writers, graphic novelists, to be able to create games that tell stories and find audiences and use technology in a way that just allows anyone to be able to create their own game. How's that sound?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of today's technology. Everything's really accessible now, so there's just no excuses to get started.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can start with very simple prototyping tools and, understand interactivity, because games are becoming the most prevalent medium of our time. And, that's one of the problems I run into here out in Canada, Ontario in particular, the province where I'm from, is games are still perceived as for kids.
Oh, no.
Right? And that's one of the reasons why getting investors out here is so difficult. They don't understand how much of look at Cuphead. I mean, they sold, 1 million games in a week at $20 a pop. That's 20 million. Boom, right there. They've sold at least 1.5 million. So there's 30 million. Was it worth the 4 years amount of work to produce that? Well, I think so. I think if you have your passion project, you can sort of work on that. And, we've already overtaken film and music and non-subscription TV. We make more money in video games than we do in those three fields combined. The one that still beats us apparently is subscription TV. So that's all your Game of Thrones and all of that stuff. And I'm not giving that up. I'm not slagging on my Game of Thrones. but that is the only holdout at this point. Yeah, I remember the year back in would have been the early 2000s when games overtook Hollywood, and nobody quite understood what that meant. And films and TV are still seen as the most pervasive media, but that's changing very fast. And I think for younger generations, it's just the understanding of the cultural importance of video games is becoming more and more apparent. And it's a great way to have an impact and be an artist and create these days, and to be able to reach, a gaming audience like that. And kudos, right? That's, it's what keeps me going most days, and hopefully, for your listeners as well, right? My parents were certainly of the generation that's like, well, when are you going to get a real job?
I remember my parents threw my console away. Just back then, parents did not like us playing games at all.
No, and it's like, well, this is my life now. I mean, I remember like a Far Side cartoon where it's like the clueless parents who are, standing behind their geeky son, and it's like, it's like they're showing this want ad commercial for, 6-figure salary if you know how to save the princess in this one level. And the parents are like, finally, video games have meaning for our son. It's all paid off in the end, right? I mean, and now it's kind of like, that is kind of the way, right? I mean, if you're, a top-notch game developer working for big studios, I mean, there's your 6-figure salary anyways, it's, I've seen it anyways, but, good times, right?
It's just a great time to be a game developer.
It's competitive, but at the same time, it's like, don't just follow in other people's formulas, because that's the fastest way to, you got to keep innovating, you got to keep trying, you got to keep, because that's where the big payoff is. That, of course, is another problem with a lot of industries where they just want you to follow a formula and think that if you do X, Y, and Z, that by necessity means, certain number of sales. And it doesn't work like that. It's technology, but it's technology of an art form. And I love that.
Oh, yeah. Man.
You got goosebumps? I got goosebumps.
Yeah,
how about you?
Goosebumps right now. It's just, I gotta be a part of this industry. And that's why I'm doing the podcast. In some way and form, I want to be a part of this game industry, and I'm doing it my way with the podcast, but making games and stuff, it's just exciting. So exciting.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you could make any game you want, ignoring resources, time, anything, or required technology, what would you, Tony Chan, love to make? What would be your passion project?
Well, it would be a game similar to Resident Evil 4. I absolutely love Resident Evil 4, and I want to make a game like that. Of course, you could strife and stuff like that, but a game like Resident Evil 4 that had all those boss fights and innovations and addictive gameplay, I absolutely love Resident Evil 4, so I want to make something similar to that, yeah.
I'm a big fan of the early days of Resident Evil. I haven't followed the last couples, though. So,
wait, you haven't played part 4?
No, I'm a huge zombie fan, though, but I just, dude, man, it's like there's so much going on. But yeah, I'm a huge zombie fan, survival horror kind of fan. So, yeah, no, kudos. It's great. It's awesome.
They port Resident Evil 4 to every single console that keeps coming out, right? So yeah, it's crazy you haven't played. Well, what about you? What game would you want to make?
Well, I think for me, that's the kinds of things that I'm doing right now is we're building a technology that allows anyone to create their own story games, and it's a blast. We're working on this mystery game right now called Shakespeare's Landlord. It's based on a novel that was written by Charlaine Harris. She is, you wouldn't necessarily know her offhand, but going back to HBO and stuff like that, her series, The Sookie Stackhouse Mysteries, was adapted and became True Blood on HBO. Okay, so we're working closely with Charlaine, and we're translating. We're developing one of her more traditional mystery stories into an interactive story, into an interactive game where you play over the course of a week. There are 30, 40 different characters you interact with and talk with to sort of chase down and solve this mystery. And it's a lot of fun. It's really amazing to see, a book come to life like that. And I would like to see that made possible for other authors. I love working with authors and where they see their imagination and their ideas come to life in an interactive way, in an interactive format. And that is so exciting for me. Absolutely. And seeing the technology, look, I'm a huge fan of the 3D worlds of, say, a Skyrim or a GTA or, an Assassin's Creed or something like that. But for me, it's character and story. And with our system, you can upload your own photographs, illustrations, and then make that interactive. So make it so you can make your own Myst game using your own photographs. And that's a way for you to create interactive content and prototype stuff really fast, where it doesn't take, a team of people working with you. You alone as a single developer can tell your own story, create your own game world, bring your imagination to life, and then publish that to be able to reach people on the web, mobile, console, smart TVs, all of that. That's sort of where we're headed.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment already that you're able to do that. Is it like do you have to be really high technically savvy in order to use your system?
No, and that's the fun of it. We've taught kids as young as 8 how to do this. Yeah. And I know what people are saying. It's like, hey, I know kids who can program VCR, my DVD player. I can't it's like, but it's with the kids we have found, they're willing to try and make mistakes, but at the same time, they don't necessarily know how to tell a story yet. Whereas I think with adults, they're afraid to try, but they've got so many stories in them if they could get it out, We've run summer camps for kids, usually in their teens, but we've also run it for kids, like I said, as young as 8. And where they come in for a week, learn the software, learn how to be storytellers, and then at the end of the week, they have a 10-minute playable game that they can share with their friends and family. That's the kind of camp I wish I'd had as a kid, right? To be able to create my own games or be given the technology that allows me to create as many games as I like or to play with as many ideas as I want. So that's, to answer your question, it's all drag and drop for the most part. There is coding in it, but there's a lot of help to do that. And if you check out our YouTube channel at One More Story Games, you can see just I've got one tutorial on there. It shows you how to start a game in 10 minutes. So just upload our software, upload a fantasy map, make it interactive, and explore it. Do that in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that you add to that, but that's to show you, right? Then it's, up to you. But that's that gives you the basic framework of okay, I'm playing this character, I'm exploring this world, what happens next? And then that's up to you. So, I'm really excited about that. It's, we've come a long way in the past 3-4 years, but, it's an exciting time to be a dreamer, a gamer, a writer, an artist, because you can come together with new technologies and, share your vision.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you. And your wife as well for creating this engine. And yes, I would definitely link that up so we could check it out. And right now we're going to head into the lightning round. So basically,
okay, great. All right, I'm ready. I'm buckled up. Here we go.
All right, here we go. What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
Education. Yeah, I went to university for 10 years, so I was very busy for a while, and then I decided to get a job, and then I got a job at EA. So there you go.
What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Attention to detail. I have these little journal books, and I make lists of every day of what I want to accomplish, and it doesn't mean I get everything done, but I'm at least organized so that this is done. I didn't get to this, move it over to the next day. It's that fastidiousness that you kind of need as if you're building or working with anything in technology. Yeah, I have a personal journal. I prefer the paper and pen kind of thing. My wife will tell you this, that I'm a little OCD in this, but I've got journals going all the way back to 1990, when I started university, and even some stuff from earlier than that back in high school. But just every year I get a new journal, and it's how I get stuff done. It's how I stay organized. It's how I keep moving. It's and even then, and if I don't write it down, it's gone, Tony. I mean, it's just, I'm so focused on whatever I'm doing at the time. But if I write it down, I know it's going to get done eventually. And, that's just how I stay organized. So I think that's a big part of sort of how I'm able to get stuff done.
Yeah, I got the same habit. I write in it's not a personal journal, but like a freedom journal. Basically, it's the same thing as yours.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
If you want to get along with other people, don't have an ego.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. Don't have an ego. What resources, aside from, of course, your engine and the Perforce, what other resources should we use to get started today?
I think, I like to say that Story Stylist is Twine on crack and steroids, and is the Uber version of Twine. But seriously, just use something very simple and start looking at how you tell a story interactively and how choices matter in narrative. I mean, and that's, anybody can do that, from kids to, adults. Be a dreamer and try to reach out and do things and learn things that way, right? Always be learning.
Always be learning. Oh, now this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to join and become successful in the game industry?
Start One More Story Games. I don't think I'd do anything differently, man. I mean, assuming I got an internet connection in there. Do I have an internet connection?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for me, it's, I have one of those little, motivational signs that's above my door here. And it's like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And for me, it's create a storytelling engine that lets anyone be able to create and tell their own story games. Anyone. And be able to share that with the world. That's what we're all about at One More Story Games with our Story Stylist technology. I just think the more communication and sharing that we do, among humanity, I think the better off we are and make the world a better place with games.
That's so deep. So deep, Blair.
Were you expecting that? Did I blow your mind there?
We have reached at the end, Blair. Thank you so much. Go ahead and give us one last part of piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
I am on Twitter, Blair.Leggett, I'm pretty sure. You can fire me off something there if you want. Blair_Leggett. So BLAIR_LEGGETT. I make time if people ask me questions. There are no stupid questions, only stupid people. No, it's seriously, and check out our YouTube channel and, drop me a line via social media. And I'm always, let me know what people are working on. And I mean, it's fun when you can go to like a games developer conference or something else like that. And you can talk with other people who have their own dreams, right? And it doesn't make my dream necessarily better than yours. It's just, we're all just sharing of what our passion is and what we're trying to do. And then you talk to those poor sods who are still working at EA and you just got to
Oh, man. Ooh.
I got a lot of guys who are still there, and they know I'm sort of kidding, kind of.
If they listen to this interview, they'll be like, what did Blair say?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Game Does. If you're a dreamer, hit up Blair. Like he's so knowledgeable, and he got this engine to help you make that dream come true with narrative-driven stories and design. So definitely hit him up.
Cheers, Tony. All the best, man. Thank you so much. I'm going to start listening religiously to your podcast, okay?
Oh, I appreciate that. And we will catch you next time.
All the best. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Game Devs, for listening. I hope you are feeling inspired. Go check out GameDevLoadout.com and type in the number 83 in the search bar to find Blair episode. Equip yourself with the best loadout and take action, because knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game. I'm Tony Chan, and I'll catch you next Wednesday on the Game Dev Loadout podcast. Peace.